Well, Prime Minister Gillard is looking to the Reserve Bank to soften the blow of next month's budget cuts by suggesting the time is right for the bank to return money to families with an interest rate cut. Her speech today has been criticised as an attempt to circumvent the central bank's independence and claim credit for a rate cut by linking it to next month's planned budget surplus. Political correspondent Tom Eagleton reports from Canberra.
Pressure's been building on the Reserve Bank to cut rates.
How much higher are you going to make it?
And now the Prime Minister's weighed in, bending, if not breaking, a convention that it's not Canberra's place to influence the bank's thinking.
No, it's not.
It's not?
There is plenty of room for the RBA to move further if need be. And to all of those calling for rate cuts, you should also be calling for a surplus, not opposing one.
Given that's exactly what the government's promised next month, the message for the Reserve Bank was clear.
We can give the Reserve Bank room to move on monetary policy if it chooses to do so, knowing that an interest rate reduction is good for families and businesses.
Tony Abbott's roasted the Prime Minister's comments, not because of an attempt to influence the Reserve Bank, but what he called
an admission of failure.
With the government yet to produce a surplus in any of its 4 budgets, he says linking one now to interest rate cuts leaves only one conclusion.
That means that for the last 4 years, you have been paying more in your mortgage because this government can't manage the economy.
But others are questioning whether the Prime Minister's comments crossed the line to influence the RBA.
We've got to be very, very careful about expressing slogan-like views that undermine what is a very analytic approach that the Reserve Bank takes.
And whether the budget is marginally in surplus or not is not going to be the critical factor. This is about political positioning in order to have the government's decision to go to a surplus related to the interest rate cuts.
A budget surplus is not a political target, but a potent economic tool. There's no clearer sign of a strong economy than a surplus.
And the opposition agrees, so much so that, as Joe Hockey revealed on Late Line last night, it wants to end what he calls the culture of entitlement.
Western nations are in financial trouble, and they're in financial trouble because, like a bad parent, over the years they have always said to voters, you can have what you want.
What Mr Hockey is talking about is huge, widespread cuts to the supports that families need.
That the poorest and the most vulnerable Australians ought not to be supported, and yet he wants to continue the entitlement of big business.
But Tony Abbott's defending his Shadow Treasurer's comments.
He was making the obvious point that if you look at a country like France, they spend double on social programs as a percentage of GDP than Australia.
One of those programs is the French paid parental leave scheme, almost identical to the one Mr Abbott's proposing, of up to 26 weeks on full pay.
Well, the difference between my proposal and the situation in Europe is that my proposal for a fair income paid parental leave scheme is fully funded.
Tony Abbott acknowledged that government spending here is nothing like what it is in Europe. Still, the pre-budget jockeying this year is more intense than normal, a sign of just how much is hinging on next month's big night. Tom Eagleton, Late Line.